Picture this. It's a typical warm Sunday evening in Edmond, Oklahoma. Hundreds of people are just hanging out at Arcadia Lake, right? They're enjoying a summer night, a party, the water, the music. But in an absolute instant, that celebration was shattered. The music was completely replaced by the sound of gunfire. Today, as part of our ongoing investigative reporting, we're examining a massive breakdown in public safety. We're going to break down the timeline, the emergency response, and the systemic vulnerabilities that literally turned a public park into an active crime scene. Okay, let's dive into this. Because, frankly, this isn't just a story about one single night in Edmond. It's a stark look at the security failures that can pop up at any large, unsecured public gathering. When an event like this happens, it immediately catches the attention of policymakers nationwide, because it exposes these glaring holes in how we actually manage and protect open-air events. We need to look closely at the data and the on-the-ground reality to understand exactly how things spiraled out of control so rapidly. Now, we have to start with the absolutely most sobering fact here. One life was lost. It is a tragic, irreversible outcome that immediately elevates the severity of this entire incident. When we analyze public safety failures, this right here is the ultimate cost of those systemic breakdowns. It brings a heavy, authoritative urgency to the investigation we're unpacking for you today. And alongside that tragic loss of life, there were 22 people injured. Just take a second to really process that number. 22. This staggering, rapidly escalating casualty count is exactly what caught Washington's attention. A few injuries, well, that might be handled quietly by local infrastructure. But 22 victims from a single incident, that signals a catastrophic event that stretches resources way beyond their breaking point and demands national scrutiny. Section 1. Night of the tragedy. All right, so to understand how we actually got to those numbers, we need to reconstruct the environment. We're shifting our investigative lens to the physical layout and the immediate timeline of the incident. In any post-event analysis, the physical space basically dictates the reality of both the chaos and the rescue efforts. Let's walk through this timeline. At 8 p.m., you have a massive, joyful gathering at the lake. Everything seems perfectly normal. But right at 9 p.m. local time, shots ring out in the crowd. Look at how incredibly fast the situation deteriorates here. By 9:05 p.m., just 5 minutes later, there's mass panic. Hundreds of people are dispersing blindly. In 5 minutes flat, the entire security posture of the park completely collapsed. That massive crowd density instantly created a logistical nightmare. Imagine being a first responder for a second. You're trying to drive an ambulance or a squad car into an area that just wasn't designed for heavy, rapid transit in the first place. And now, you have hundreds of terrified people flooding out of the exact narrow access points you need to enter. The sheer volume of people became an immediate physical barrier to actually saving lives. Section 2, Anatomy of the Response. Let's move to and see how this builds when we look at the Edmond Police Department's immediate actions upon arriving. Analyzing the anatomy of this response shows us exactly where standard operating procedures meet the unpredictable, really harsh reality of a mass casualty event. Now, what's really interesting about this is how 3 specific factors combine to completely paralyze containment efforts. You don't just have hundreds of people fleeing blindly, you have them fleeing into a completely unlit, pitch-black outdoor environment. And because it's a public lake, the perimeter is entirely unsecured and porous. There are no designated exits to lock down, no choke points to monitor. Suspects and victims alike just vanish into the darkness. Which brings us to a devastating reality for law enforcement. Minutes to arrive, but hours to secure. Local authorities were on the scene within minutes. Their response time was genuinely commendable. But arriving is really only step 1. Securing a massive, unlit, sprawling outdoor environment with a porous perimeter, that's nearly impossible. The public safety failure here isn't the speed of the police, it's the completely unmanageable nature of the venue itself during a crisis. So, what do investigators actually have to do in this kind of environment? Well, first off, they have to secure forensic evidence in the dark, where vital clues can literally be trampled by fleeing crowds. Second, they've got to filter through highly chaotic, completely contradictory witness statements from traumatized people. And third, they have to attempt suspect identification without any structured surveillance footage. It's an investigative uphill battle from the very moment the first siren wails. Section 3. The Public Health Crisis. The impact of this tragedy doesn't just stop at the edge of the lake. We really have to shift our focus from the immediate law enforcement response to the immense strain placed on the city's medical infrastructure. A failure in public safety at the park immediately triggers a crisis in the emergency room. So we're back to the number 22. It is absolutely vital to understand that 22 sudden gunshot injuries instantly transform a local crime story into a full-blown public health crisis. You're pulling every available ambulance. You're calling in off-duty surgeons. The ripple effect of this one unsecured gathering impacts the medical care of the entire surrounding community. So, the crucial point here is understanding this concept of maximum pressure. This is the extreme limit of a city's medical and emergency infrastructure to handle a sudden high volume of casualties. A single event, just one party on a Sunday night, pushed local hospitals to their absolute limits. It's a terrifying stress test of our public systems. If a community's emergency network reaches maximum pressure from one park gathering, well, we have to start asking some really hard questions about our baseline preparedness. Section 4. Securing public gatherings. This leads us directly into the macro-level policy implications that Washington insiders and security experts are furiously reviewing right now. I mean, how do we prevent this from happening at the thousands of other lakes, parks, and public spaces across the country? We're left looking at a core legislative debate: community freedom versus high-stakes security measures. On one hand, public lands belong to the public, right? People have the freedom to gather, celebrate, and use these spaces without feeling like they're locked in a fortress. But on the other hand, the reality of modern threats demands robust, potentially intrusive security measures to protect those very same people. It's an incredibly delicate, high-stakes balancing act that lawmakers are going to have to navigate impartially. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what happens next. Tragedies like Arcadia Lake are often the catalyst for sweeping national policy shifts, triggering legislative reviews of how public lands and large gatherings are policed. When the standard operational procedure fails so catastrophically, leaving 1 dead and 22 injured, legislative review isn't just likely, it's inevitable. The data we've reviewed today, that'll be the exact foundation for those incoming debates. So what does this all mean? We are left with a pretty provocative question to consider. Is it time for a completely new doctrine on securing public gatherings? How can we proactively engineer safety into our parks without destroying the freedom to actually enjoy them? As we continue tracking this investigation, we really want to hear from you. How do we prevent future tragedies like this? Let us know your thoughts. And hey, if you found this explainer valuable, make sure to subscribe for more deep dive, data-driven analysis. Thank you so much for joining me today, and stay safe out there.